on Zoom. I'll start again. Welcome everybody, and welcome to Fiona, Bridget and Steve on Zoom. If I could ask Gerald to open our meeting, please, with a karakia.
Today's karakia will be more of a Christian-based one, and then we'll ask for God to Helen and the family this time. With the thing up guy, I hoa tēnei mātou e tuka tēnei te rauka ko mai me te whakaori ki awa I nāmana kang uhia mai ki nungia mātou mai whintanga o tēnei rā whaino o tēnei haora. Kāroa nei mātou kia tatu mai nā koe ki wainganui tēnei ringa. Kia hei arataki nā kōru kia whai hua ai te hāpori whānui. O te rā, kia tau i omana ki tangi ki rogi ki ungu whānau o Helen, ana tamariki, ātou e noho taimahani tēnei wā. Tupi ki kaha, ki ora. Tupi ki marama tangi ki rungi ātou. E nei tuka tēnei ringa nōre te kāro. Tuka nei o te matua, te tamatu waiwa tapu. Nā nei pono mānga, e tautuku mai aine ātene. Ai, ameni.
Ameni. Thank you, Gerald. I'll just ask everybody to stand in silence to remember Neil Warboys. Thank you. We stood in silence to remember Neil and also to symbolically support Helen, Sam, Hamish, Malcolm, Helen and Neil's 3 daughters-in-law and their grandchildren and their wider family on this day of Neil's service to celebrate his life. This will be a very difficult day for Helen and her family. She is very appreciative of all the love, the prayers, the kindness, the support and goodwill that she and her family are receiving. There were more bunches of flowers than in a flower shop when I visited on Tuesday. She said that she was actually overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness and kindness of people. We all know that Helen is a strong person, but she is hurting intensely. She's been a close friend of mine and a work colleague for 29 years, and it's just so sad that she has lost Neil. Neil has been a well-respected farmer, a great family man, never happier than when he's on the farm. His dog Meg was moping around looking for him when I was out there on Tuesday. Back in the fielding promotion days, Helen used to organise lots of events and they nearly all involved hay bales, entertainment stages, and it was Neil and their sons, Sam, Hamish and Malcolm, who were quietly in the background, providing the hay bales, setting everything up, setting the stages up, all the heavy work that people like me shied away from. They did the setup, the breakdown. He was very supportive of Helen as mayor, but ideally for Neil, that was quietly in the background. That was his style. Neil was a thoroughly nice bloke. Thank you to all elected members and staff for your support of Helen and offers of help. Thanks also for your support of me. The next period of time will be full of unknowns. Helen will have bad days and better days. It's important that we keep up the support and kindness. I'm going to stop there as I'm starting to sound like the Prime Minister. But a big thank you to all. And Helen, we're with you in spirit today. We have an apology for Mayor Helen. Do we have any other apologies? Well, we have apologies, I guess, from councillors Quarry and Quigley, but they, of course, are on council business at Rural and Provincial in Wellington. And I think everyone else is here, either in person or on Zoom. I'll move apologies be accepted. Seconded, Councillor Hadfield. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, carried. Any requests for leave of absence? We'll move to the confirmation of minutes, which is rather easy today because we don't have to do it. Any declarations of interest? The items on today's agenda. Okay, nothing in the public forum, no presentations. I'm not aware of any notification of late items. Nothing, right? Recommendations from committees. So we go to the main part of our meeting. Oh, sorry, minutes from other committees. Nothing there. So we go to the main part of our meeting, and that is our officer reports. And we'll start with 11.1 on page 5.
We need to approve the minutes from the 10th of November.
Do we? Okay.
I don't think they're in here, are they?
We haven't got them.
We'll do that on the first.
We'll just do it the next time. Yep. We're just on the agenda, it says nil. So no problem. We'll work around that.
Here's my minutes attached.
So we'll move to 11.1, and which is the approval to notify the proposed traffic safety and road use bylaw. And Wiramu and John. Team, come up and join us. Welcome.
John and Charlotte are going to answer all the hard questions.
Thanks, Brittany.
So kia ora koutou, my name is Brittany Evans. For those of you who haven't met me before, I'm infrastructure project planner within the infrastructure team. Charlotte, do you want to introduce yourself?
Charlotte Jeffrey, engineering technician with the Rogan team.
John Jones, project manager.
So, kia ora koutou council. As a council, we have a responsibility to uphold the safety of all road users and to protect the community's investment in roading assets across our district. Following an initial proposal in 2020 to update our bylaw about stock movements on roads, we listened to the strong views of our farming community, which argued the proposals simply weren't workable. Since then, we've worked closely with the farming community to try to better balance common sense and the practicality of farming activities whilst upholding the safety of road users. Today, council, we are asking if you are satisfied with the efforts that have been made to achieve this balance, and if you are ready to find out if the community feels the same by consulting on the proposed bylaw. The report today seeks 3 recommendations from council to determine whether a bylaw is the most appropriate way to address the perceived problems with traffic safety and road use, to approve the proposed bylaw for public consultation, and to approve the accompanying statement of proposal to be released alongside the proposed bylaw. Councillor Ford, if you're happy for me to proceed on this basis, I'll now touch on the key points within the report, summarise the section 155 assessment process, and then provide a brief overview of provisions within the proposed bylaw as summarised within the statement of proposal.
I think that sounds like a really good way forward. Thank you. Just what I was about to suggest. Yeah.
And just recognising that some of the new councillors wouldn't have had the background that the repeating councillors had, so I'll make sure that you're across the provisions.
Brittany, can I just double check that our people on Zoom, Fiona, Bridget and Steve, can you hear clearly? All good? Thank you very much. That's great.
So as part of the bylaw review, we start with a section 155 process, and that identifies the issues related to traffic safety and road use that we think are happening in our district. We have gone through that process in the attachment that you would have had. So let's look at the section 155 now. So you'll see there's several parts to this process. So in part 1, we think about what is the perceived problem. So you'll see we have a list of about 12 problems with traffic safety and road use in our district.
It's page,
And
page 12 we're on.
And then in part 2, we explain why these are an issue for the community and council. So we've done that in quite some detail there in part 2. Then you move on to part 3. So we need to ensure that there's an evidence base behind the perceived problem. So it's just not Brittany being annoyed on her way to work, it's actually got an evidence base. So you'll see there we've looked at customer complaints, we've looked at professional guidance that Charlotte and John are particularly aware of, and we've also looked at other councils and what issues they experience and try to learn from their experiences. Then we move on to the next part, which says, is the bylaw actually the right way of dealing with these problems? So we've done a full assessment there. So you'll see throughout that part, some of the issues actually weren't best dealt with through the bylaw. So we've ended up with a set of key issues that we want to address through this bylaw. So those issues are heavy vehicles, goods and service vehicles and stock vehicles stopping, standing or parking in urban street, including damage to road berms. Traffic safety and environmental nuisance concerns with stop driving and crossing, mud, excrement and silage on the road, particularly at harvest time, planting of trees or other vegetation within the road reserve, particularly in rural areas, the control of roadside grazing, roles and responsibilities for maintenance and ownership of stock underpasses, responsibility of proper installation, repair and maintenance of vehicle crossings, the ability to regulate, restrict or prohibit road use, including the ability to specify special vehicle lanes and the ability to specify and enforce class restricted and time limited parking, for example, 30-minute parking spaces in mobility zones. Then we say, what are the pros and cons of dealing with this through a bylaw? Then we say, basically, does this give any limitations under the Bill of Rights Act? We have assessed that none of the provisions do. However, we will reassess after consultation if there are to be any changes. And so this document is something that we're asking you to approve in the recommendations. So we'll park that for a while. So explaining a bit more on the background of this bylaw. So in March 2020, Council notified a draft stock movement and grazing bylaw, a draft stock underpass policy, and the traffic safety and road use bylaw was parked, mind the pun, until a parking study was undertaken. So we ended up going out for public consultation on the stock movement and grazing bylaw and the stock underpass policy. We experienced significant feedback from the community and dismay on some of the inclusions. Many feedback points included, there was a lot of animal welfare activists concerned about tethering of goats. So many supported 100% ban on tethering animals. And then you'll see another under 2.6 of the report, another collection of some of the feedback we got. So due to significant public objection to those bylaws and regulations, the council withdrew them all and we went back to the drawing board. So a refreshed approach has been taken to form the proposed traffic safety and road use bylaw, which we're asking you to adopt for consultation today. This approach sought to keep the bylaw simple and practical for both users and administrators, and we wanted to communicate the intention of what's included more clearly. So particular focus has been given by our team to consult early and thoroughly with the Manawatu Provincial Federated Farmers Group. So I'll explain the section 155 assessment there. So I know Galpin had hoped to be here today, but I assume she's on Zoom, but we've paid a particular attention with this bylaw to engage closely with the comms team, and we have a full communication plan. The tactic is to be upfront with the history of this issue, but also explain that we've listened to the feedback we received and try to consult with farmers to make sure the provisions are practical for them. So now let's have a look at the statement of proposal document. So the statement of proposal is kind of like a summary of the bylaw that the community can kind of just grab and read and say, you know, what's council proposing here?
Page 23.
So we have a summary and we talk about the purpose of the bylaw, and then we summarise the section 155 assessment we undertook. So I'll spend some time going through the next part, which is the proposed provisions of the bylaw, just so everyone has a good understanding of what we're going out with to the community. And maybe after each of the what section, we can take any questions you have on those provisions. So the first one is pretty easy. We've removed provisions addressing the setting of speed limits. So this is because there's now the land transport rule setting of speed limits where it provides that framework. So we no longer need to address this in our bylaw. So that's a pretty check. We've done that. So parking, there's no significant changes been made to the previous bylaw. So these provisions give council the ability to specify enforced parking spaces, including class restricted and time limited parking. So it's important to remember we've had strong feedback from our fielding community that they do not want parking wardens or parking meters. So this bylaw gives you the ability to look at how we can improve parking in the town centre in other ways. So we don't need to decide that now, but this bylaw would give you the ability to do that in the future. Any questions on parking?
I guess my only comment is that I'm pleased to hear that we're keeping our options open for the future is what you're telling us, which is because I think it is something that we'll need to address, but we don't need to do it today. So that's great. Thank you.
So roading and crack traffic controls. So these provisions give council the ability to regulate, restrict or prohibit road use, including the ability to specify special vehicle lanes. So there's no need for us to duplicate the road rules, right? So we've been really mindful of that and tried to simplify our bylaw. And also it's not much different from the previous one. Something we've added just for clarity is a reference to beaches. So beaches can be treated like a road and we can prohibit or restrict use of vehicles as required. An example of that is some of you may remember the stream at Hamataki Beach was slightly flooded. So we said it wasn't safe for vehicles to access the beach at that time. Planting of vegetation. So the LGA gives us the ability to prune vegetation. However, we wanted something that prohibits the planting of vegetation within the road reserve. So this just helps with issues like not being able to see at intersections, etc. Removal of mud, silage, excrement, or other direct debris. So we've needed to be quite practical with this provision because we had a lot of people laughing at the thought of them out on the road with a shovel and a broom. So we've said that we require the removal of mud, silage, excrement or other debris as soon as practicable in a way that does not cause dangers to other road users. And basically this also gives council the ability, if someone's left a real mess, we can clean that up and recover costs from the party responsible. Is there any questions about the those provisions?
Councillor Bilski, the planting of vegetation on roads has been a bit of an issue that you've taken an interest in. Are you comfortable with what's proposed?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to speak about vegetation. Yeah, I know, and I've been guilty of it myself in the past of planting strategic trees on the corridor, but I think it is still happening, and it should not happen as the law agrees. But I think a thing which concerns me is the seedlings that grow up that are never pulled out when they're only a few millimeters high, centimeters high, and they could easily be pulled out. These pine trees growing on the side of the road, and also Douglas fir and those other very seedlings that grow very spread about, that are not put there by the neighbouring farm, but they're put there by seedlings, and very few are ever pulled out. And I think that's my request would be for the roading team to take an observation of these seedlings. I could show them quite a few if they wanted me to go with them, but that are happening now, and I actually often pull them out myself. But on the tree which does upset me is one south of Apathy, which is a poplar tree growing within a metre or two of the road, and it's already killed a lovely lady a few years ago, the McKinnon girl. And I would like to see that sort of tree, those sort of trees that are very close to the road, big poplar trees. I'd like to see them in the program to be removed. So that's my thoughts on it. I definitely, I couldn't quite believe how many in your report of how many have actually been killed by trees over the since 2015, I think. So they are a big hassle. There's no ifs or buts about it. And I think we need to really start being active and cleaning them up and pulling out any seedlings that are coming up that will be problematic. But that's my thoughts on it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Councillor Belsky. So I think there's some feedback there that perhaps can go to the team. But we seem to be satisfied that the provision within the bylaw will allow us to the ability to make sure it doesn't sort of happen going forward.
That's right. I think, yeah, it's certainly there.
Councillor Short.
Just following on from Steve's comment, would it be possible to put some comments in there that we give permission for adjoining property owners to remove seedlings from the side of the road, and kind of, people might not want to deal with them because it's the council's problem, but if we give them permission in the bylaw, then if anyone challenges on it, we've
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we would probably pick it up as part of our maintenance schedules and yeah.
Yep.
Okay, if we're happy to move on to vehicle crossings, Councillor Ford.
Everyone. Yep, thank you.
So the LGA allows for council to require the owner or occupier of land to have a properly constructed vehicle crossing at their expense. So we need to provide some conditions and specifications to allow for this provision to be enforced. So we need to advise the requirements of maintenance of vehicle crossings and to highlight that maintenance is the responsibility of the owner or occupier. So to install a vehicle crossing, you need to gain council's consent, and the work is to be undertaken by an approved contractor in compliance with council's standard and planning requirements. So we already have a list of approved contractors on our website, so we'll be maintaining that list. Any questions on vehicle crossings? Okay.
Oh, can I?
Councillor Short.
Did you discuss that one with Federated Farmers? Because it seems to me, if you want to put in a vehicle crossing in a rural setting, and it might just be to a paddock, most farmers would have the equipment to actually construct that themselves.
No, so only to be able to do anything within the roads, you need traffic management to start. So we don't allow non-approved contractors to do crossings.
I don't think that would stop them though.
No, it won't stop. It doesn't stop people, but if we find them, we often will correspond with them and let them know that if it's not compliant, that they have to get it up to compliant standard. Or we've actually recently had somebody remove the whole crossing because it was completely non-compliant with a non-compliant culvert. So when we do identify non-compliant crossings, we do often act upon that. But yes, people do still put them in without permission.
Yeah, I think the risk of non-compliance is quite high in terms of damage to our assets. So we really want to control that by having a list of improved.
And I guess the main one would be not installing the culvert at a level or a size that's practical for the water table.
Exactly.
The other part is the whole bylaw has got two parts: is preservation of the asset, and the other part is safety. So we have to put these things in as a duty of care, so that something does go wrong, and we all end up in farmers' code. We can say, well, we have a bylaw that states that they should do this. Helps with council's liability. So
I suppose
there's
also
two aspects to this all the way through: there's asset preservation and safety.
Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, it's a bit of an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think, I may have read this wrongly, but in my first read, I looked at vehicle crossings and approved contractors, and I thought, oh, this is about putting in, vehicle crossings in town, having approved contractors to construct the driveway entrances into either housing or new subdivisions. And I think if a farmer's got a gate somewhere, he's going to drive out of it onto the road. I don't think it actually matters really to them how they do that. They'll just drive out of the gate onto the road. So I think
Can we use the microphone?
Yeah, sorry about that. Seeing I wasn't muttering.
So it does need some clarity, and I guess the danger of this is that we end up having a bylaw that, one, nobody's going to take any notice of, or B, we don't have the ability to enforce. So I understand what Councillor Short's saying, but that would be my concern.
So just if I may, Councillor Ford, remember that the bylaw sort of sets the mechanism for controlling the activity, but if there's any exceptions, the person should contact council and the roading team can work with them. So I think it's good having that trigger where the person comes to council, has a discussion, and then we can work out next steps together. So that would probably, if I was a rural resident wanting to do that kind of thing, I would just ring council and talk it through. And it's probably not going to be a big drama, to be honest.
It's just formalising what happens at the moment, because we've got Martin Skinners.
Excuse me, sorry, we can't hear. Well, some people can't hear. Can we use the microphone? Sorry. The people on Zoom can't hear.
Do I push this?
That's all.
It's on.
Thanks.
Can you hear me now? Yes, so it just formalises what we do at the moment, because we have corridor access manager. So anybody that wants to dig a hole in the corridor or access ways or anything, they have to contact us, and Martin Skinner works with them. So if it's in the urban area, we've got standards for concrete ones. And if it's in the rural area, we come up with something that's reasonable and practical. So this just formalises it. And as Brittany says, it's a trigger so that they talk to us, so that we'll work together.
Thank you, Councillor McFadden.
Thank you. My understanding, well, the way I read this, and I may have it wrong, is that this applies to all crossings.
Yeah.
And the cost of putting a crossing in is like $16,000. So to really go out there and think that they're going to turn around, as Councillor Hatfield said, and go and update all of their crossings is a little bit, I think, wishful thinking. And how are we going to go and inspect every one of those crossings for every rural road in New Zealand?
Just new
I get it for the new ones. I get it for those, but there's a lot of those existing ones that actually don't meet the issues that you face, but aren't compliant.
Yeah, it's not retrospective. This is to going forward.
Going forward,
Go
fine,
back
thank
and
you.
look at
Okay,
everything else.
thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
I've just had some experience on putting a couple of culverts in. They cost 25,000 each. But in a big drain on Instead Line, Martin was, very good. Although, he did demand a culvert that I thought was bigger than necessary. But the interesting was, you did right, the existing culverts are somewhat smaller than the new culverts going in, and they could cause issues. Got a big pipe going into a small pipe, but that's the way it is. You can't replace all the old ones very effectively. So, yeah, I think the current system's working reasonably well.
Okay, so we've had some clarification that it's basically about going forward rather than retrospectively. Councillors, are we comfortable to proceed now? Thank you, Brittany.
So let's move into our stock on road provisions. So we'll take a little bit of time with these ones, and you can ask any questions throughout.
This one's never been contentious though.
Stock on road and urban areas, so the same as our previous bylaw. You are not to drove stock in any urban area, and that excludes emergencies and if they escape, etc. Stock droving. So this is obviously moving the stock down the road as opposed to across. So the previous bylaw included the need for a traffic management plan to be submitted to council no later than 5 days before the movement, and I think it was to be renewed once a year. So following engagement with farmers in the district, we have removed the requirement for a traffic management plan to be submitted. This is to better reflect the reality of the dynamic and unpredictable nature of farming activities. However, we need to ensure road safety is upheld for all road users. So we have proposed a set of conditions for stock droving to be permitted in rural areas. So any stock droving activity that does not meet these conditions must receive written consent from council to occur. Would you guys like me to briefly talk you through these conditions for the activity to be permitted?
I think it's a good idea because this has been a big one. Yep.
So within the bylaw document that you guys have, the proposed traffic safety and road use bylaw, it's my page 11, but it might be different for you guys. Under part 5, stock on roads. page 40, maybe.
Yep, thank you. Page,
Stock
yep,
on.
page 40, part 5, stock on roads, yes.
Okay, so course 27 talks about no droving in urban areas. So if you flick over the page, now we go into our set of conditions for droving in rural areas to be permitted. So basically, it must not be reasonably practicable to move the stock within your own land. So that's pretty obvious most of the time. You need to move it down the road. So in order to do that, you must not drove down any high volume rural connection roads. So you guys would have received a map with your documentation. So these routes have more than 950 vehicle movements per day. So they're extremely high volume routes, and we've identified these. So if you were to want to complete a stock movement on one of those roads, you would not meet the conditions, and you'd need to contact council to talk further.
Page 52 for us.
So I'll keep going through the conditions and we can stop at the end and talk about anything in particular.
Thank you.
You must drive during the hours of daylight. So the bylaw defines the hours of daylight, 30 minutes before sunrise and 30 minutes after sunrise. So between that period, sunset, sorry. The size of the mob of stock must not be so large as to cause unreasonable delay to traffic. So we've put a little bit of flexibility in that, and we haven't named the amount of animals within the mob. That's to reflect some feedback from the Manawatu provincial group. The stock must be moving continuously forward at a good pace, not to cause unreasonable delay to traffic. In terms of signage, we want you to have signs at least 3 times the permanent speed limit away from the activity. So for example, if I'm in a 100k area, I'm going to have a sign 300 meters before and 300 meters after my droving activity. And that's to reflect the amount of time it takes for someone to hit the brakes, basically. So that's based on professional guidance. Any pilot vehicle you're using must have headlights and hazards on to ensure clear visibility to other traffic. So does anyone have any feedback on those conditions or any issues?
Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, just on the pilot vehicle, it says any pilot vehicle, but doesn't sort of say whether you must have a pilot vehicle. My concern with that would be if most farmers would only drive with a 4-wheel motorbike or something, which doesn't tend to have a hazard light on it.
Yeah.
So that's not quite practical.
So we did, after feedback with the Manawatu provincial group, we did change the wording of that to not require a pilot vehicle.
Okay.
But we would expect that a quad bike or something similar could just have any kind of light on it, just for extra precautions. And we had some feedback that that was relatively practical.
Okay.
Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think last time we did talk about having orange beacon lights on horses, if I recall, Councillor Campbell. But there's a couple of things in here that I'm wondering about. So the definition of an experienced drover, I think, is open to interpretation. I'm not quite sure that that's quite the right wording. And to actually say that stock must be moving continuously forward at a good pace is actually probably a bit difficult, given the as we've previously alluded, the rather inane nature of livestock doing what they do, and possibly that is an area where should is more appropriate than must. Again, you know, I do question the definition of an experienced drover, because actually droving is an art in itself. If you go back in time where farmers would drove cattle, say from the Wairarapa to the Manawatu, and they would drove them on horseback, and it might take a number of days. So there's a technical definition of droving, and I'm not quite sure that we've actually got it quite right here. Most people that are moving stock up and down a road, in my view, are experienced in stock handling. And I actually think the crux of it, and I'll come to that again later on in stock crossing stuff, is that actually stock handling is probably more important a skill than stock droving. Don't want to be pedantic, but I think it's actually quite relevant.
So we'd be happy to change the inclusion to it could be an experienced stock handler.
Well, it's just a suggestion. I'm open to colleagues' views.
All right, seems like a
Mr. Belsky's got a view, obviously.
Councillor Belsky.
I think my knowledge of stock movement in the hills and up the flats up here is that definitely a cone or a warning needs to be put in front of the gate that they're going to go into, so that I think that's all it's needed, is a cone in the road saying stock, which seems to work well. As far as experience, people are taking the stock up the road. Well, they are experienced. They take stock all over the farm, and so on the road's just another thing. I think there was a farmer once that was putting stock on the road and then going home and having a cup of tea and allowing the stock to feed. So I think stock to be continually moved is to me good to have in there, because it gives you some clout if a farmer does that today. As far as we had a very close encounter with a farmer coming around, with a car coming around the corner very fast, and not quite hitting the stock, but very nearly. And the farmer said to him, well, listen, the road law says that you are to stop within half the foreseeable distance. Now, that is true. And so I think that is the case when you are driving on these roads, but they all don't do that, of course. But the thing which is a problem, and I know there was someone killed north of Cheltenham when horses. I think the biggest problem we've got is not so much driving, but it's stock on the road that get out at night that the farmer is unaware of. And I've had 2 gates stolen in my years here, and it's a miracle the stock didn't get out onto the road. So there is some avenues that the farmer doesn't know, but I think it almost needs a warning. Probably doesn't, but a warning. Beware of stock on the road, because they do get on the road. There are gates do get rubbed open, and things can happen in that sense. But as far as getting back to this act of driving and stock on the road, I think the bylaw covers it, except experienced driver is certainly over the top, is my opinion. So that's me. I think I agree with Grant or Councillor Hadfield on his definition of a driver. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Belsky. So it seems like we're fairly comfortable with experienced stock handler. Yes, I've seen that. Thanks, Councillor Blackmore.
Thank you. I just wondered, drover is actually defined in here, and it's a pretty simple definition. So drover means a person who is driving stock along or across a road. Experience could mean you've done that once or twice. Does that differ your opinion, Councillor Hadfield, at all, having the definition in there is fairly loose?
I would think that experience in stock handling specifically is a broader definition that gives broader depth to actually the level of experience that we're actually requiring, rather than some specific definition. That would be my view, Councillor Blackmore.
So Councillor Paul would be happy to make that change.
Thank you. I think that's probably going to be good. Councillor Short.
I just wanted to ask about the map with the high volume rural connection routes, which is on page 52. Will that be going out with the public consultation?
Yes, that will be a supporting document.
Because I see we haven't mentioned state highways. I actually feel we probably should. But we have highlighted State Highway 54 from Fielding to Cheltenham, but no other state highway.
So perhaps we need to look at our map again, but it shouldn't show state highways because obviously we don't have control.
But I just wondered if it, for clarity for the consultation, even if state highways were shown as a different colour and mentioned that they are under the auspice of Waka Kotahi, just so that, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure, like State Highway 54, which is quite rural, I don't know whether stock are banned from all of it or part of it.
Yeah, okay, so we'll perhaps we can make the map interactive so people can zoom in. Yeah, sure.
Thank you. I think because the public don't understand that we're responsible for some roads and Waka Kotahi are responsible for others. So I think that would be helpful. Right, I think we can move forward.
Okay, so stock crossing. So same situation for clarity. Stock crossings are permitted subject to a set of conditions. So same kind of symmetry to the conditions as droving. So you must not be able to move them within private land. So you've again chosen to cross them across the road. Again, not in areas that are high volume rural connection routes. If you are planning to do that, contact council. Hours of daylight, again, the same as droving. Advance warning, so this is slightly different. We've said 150 metres in front and behind the activity. Signage will be installed by council after you contact them to arrange this. And from memory, the signage is to be flapped down when you're not using it. And we've had feedback that that's pretty standard practice. So a static flashing amber beacon on the entranceway of the stock crossing point to be operating while the stock are crossing the road. At least one drover, so we'll change that to handler, who's experienced in stock crossings wearing high vis. So this is just saying that all reasonable and practical steps must be made to allow for vehicles using the road to pass through. So that's not asking them to sit for 2 hours, for example. Entranceway to the stock crossing point must be surfaced in appropriate material, such as gravel or limestone, and be constructed to accommodate the regular moving of stock to a standard that prevents damage to the road and avoids mud being tracked. Mats to be used to protect the road verge and the carriageway from damage. And that's the list there. So any feedback on any of those?
Councillor Hatfield.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just again, 29.2F, Brittany.
Yes.
Just the wording again, I think experience and stock crossing is again experience in animal handling.
Yes, we'll change that. Yeah.
And actually probably the definition of drover there is actually probably appropriate, to be honest.
Yeah.
But play with the words, but I think my point is that the experience in actually stock handling is the most critical thing in all of us.
Sure, we'll make
in
that
terms
change.
of safety. Yep, thank you.
Councillor Belsky.
Yeah, I just had a query. We had a farmer that had deer in the Pahongana. They had deer on each side of the road, and he had gates that swung around that closed the road off when he was bringing deer across. And it took some time, and someone complained, and I think he said the bylaw or the law said that you couldn't hold up traffic for longer than 30 minutes because the deer were running around. They weren't going through the gate. It was quite a hold up. Is there a limit on how long that these gates can be across the road?
So we have intentionally been flexible in that to allow the discretion of the farmer, but we have said that we're not wanting for vehicles to be stopped for an unreasonable amount of time. So we haven't gone as far to specify a time limit. We did with the previous consultation, and we got negative feedback about that. Oh,
no, that's okay. I just wondered if there was something that there was a time limit, but obviously it's open to discretion, and most farmers would be trying to open the road as quick as possible. So thanks for that.
Thank you. Erring on the side of the farmer.
In
a rural district.
It's a very rare thing to happen, but it can happen.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you, Brittany.
Right, so that's the stock on road provisions. So if we take ourselves back to the statement of proposal into the summarised document.
Just page numbers helpful, please.
Mine's 6, but
28. That's all right. If you tell me 6, I can say 28.
Okay, 28.
You say potato, I'll say potato.
Exactly. So under stock underpasses, we'll have a look at those now. So due to historical issues with ongoing maintenance and ownership of stock underpasses, a process has been created for creation of a covenant instrument to be registered on titles. So this covenant helps to ensure all parties involved are aware of key responsibilities for stock underpasses, including their maintenance or removal. So just one thing about stock underpasses in the bylaw at the back, we have a handy flow chart for people to be able to walk themselves through the stock underpass process.
Councillor Short.
In the absence of Councillor Quarry, I know he raised an issue somewhere down the south of the district where there was a stock underpass put in because the farmer owned properties on both sides of the road. But then when the property got sold, one person bought one side and one person bought the other, meaning then who owns the stock underpass and who's responsible for its ongoing maintenance?
So that's part of the creation of the covenant instrument. It is registered against the title of any parcels involved with the stock underpass. So that will directly help to address that kind of issue. We actually spoke to the person with that issue during the preparation of the process, and the covenant does reflect that situation and help to deal with that.
Thank you.
So is everyone happy with the stock underpass provisions as they are? Okay, so let's go to roadside grazing and tethering. So there's two types of roadside grazing. So one is temporary, and that's in a temporary fence or a tethered animal, and one's permanent. So let's talk about the temporary first. So temporary roadside grazing within a fenced area. There's a set of conditions that must be complied for this to occur, and this is for sheep, steers, heifers, or cows. And this includes compliance with Council's roadside grazing temporary fencing standard. So you would have got a little attachment with the fencing standard with your documentation, and that again will be a supporting document for you to have a look at with the bylaw. It's pretty basic stuff about the electric fence required, and then the set of conditions are, for example, in the hour of daylight, etc. Did you want me to work through the conditions for temporary roadside grazing in a fenced area?
Councillors, would you like, just raise your hand if you'd like Brittany to go through point by point. Councillor Short.
I just think that once it goes out for public consultation, people might ask us questions. So perhaps it would be just an overview.
So temporary roadside grazing within a temporary fenced area. We want your stock to be sheep, steers, heifers, or cows. So we don't want any other type of animal in the area. And so just to raise the risk with this kind of activity is you're putting an infrangible object in the roading corridor. So that's quite a large risk to vehicles and road safety. So that's why we've put these provisions in.
So you're saying plastic electric fencing gear is okay, but steel waratahs are not okay.
Exactly, yes. So,
Councillor Hadfield.
Just on that, Brittany, and I'll probably jump forward a bit under the fencing standards, but again, the terminology is a fencing upright. To me, when I farmed on hill country stuff in Taihebi, a fencing upright was anything I could get into Papa that would actually hold a fence, whether that was concrete, wood, metal, fiberglass, or whatever. So I think, the terminology around fencing uprights probably needs a little bit of clarity, possibly. I'm sorry if I've got ahead of you.
Yes, I agree. However, there is a condition that all fencing materials must be removed as soon as the area has been grazed off. So that might help to accommodate some issues with more non-frangible objects.
So does that necessarily mean that somebody could bang some pointed number 3 rounds on the ground?
No, so in the fencing standard it says the following materials are not acceptable for use: metal waratahs, barbed wire, and timber posts.
Right, I did read that. So does that include, say, timber stakes, hardwood stakes that are used for electric fencing, possibly? Because hardwood stakes are considered an insulator. So people can stick up a hardwood stake in the ground and run electric fencing wires around it. I don't want to be pedantic, but these are the sorts of things that, could end up being questioned or challenged. Some of my colleagues might have a view on whether or not that's relevant or not.
Okay, got a couple of questions. Councillor McFadden.
I would suggest that most of that it's referred to as temporary fencing posts or standards, and that they're normally placed by foot. In other words, you don't hit them in the ground, and once you put them in the ground, we hammer them in the ground, they no longer become temporary. So all of the temporary fencing standards that I've ever seen have a foot application where you push them in with your foot. And you can't do that with a waratah.
Or fiberglass rod you drive into the ground as well.
Yeah, you do, but that there becomes more permanent. Whereas if you can buy fiberglass rods with a foot on them.
Thank you. Councillor Belsky.
I've had this discussion with people on fencing on the side of the road using hard posts or using waratahs. And they just point back to me. They said, "Oh, what about my mailbox?" So it can become quite a little bit complicated. But the thing is, if this bylaw gives us the teeth to take a post out, because we had a complaint up Karewera Road, and I took Martin Skinner up there, and there were hard posts. There was wired up with permanent steel wire, and it was left to grow long grass up and things like that. So I think if this bylaw allows the council officers, managers to actually enforce that, to take those posts out and wire out, it's a very good thing. And I think waratahs, the only thing I've got a little concern is when you put electric fence wire, a poly wire down the side of the road, and you want to go back and you've got a corner. Sometimes a waratah is quite handy just to put on the corner, but I think I see the letter of the law, I don't think will be applied here. It's just basically you have got clout, and I think, to me, I agree with it 100%, because according to Martin, he didn't have the clout before to actually remove these posts driven in by a post driver from the side of the road. So yeah, I'm all for it, actually. Yep, thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, look, just to finish on a lighter note on this one, I noticed on 2.2 that signs, electric fence signs, not measuring not less than 200 by 100 with the inscription electric fence on both sides. And I thought it very poignant and appropriate to point out that animals in the Manawatu district are actually highly intelligent. And it's very good to see that we're having a sign that animals can read from their side of the fence. I thought that was fantastic. So well done, Manawatu livestock.
Thank you. We're sponsored by Specsavers.
Councillor Belsky.
Oh yeah, actually, I think it's a good idea to have a sign, because cyclists are going past and they may just reach out. I think it is a reasonable request in myself. As Councillor Hadfield said, yeah, animals certainly can't read, but a cyclist might be able to read and see it before he touches a wire and gets a bad experience out in the country. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell.
Just a question. There are a couple of roads in the district which have got very wide road booms, and I'm thinking of Bolton Road, south of Cheltenham, obviously the old railway corridor. But if somebody was to apply to fence off that area,
State highway anyway.
it's a state highway, yeah. Okay, so it doesn't apply to us under the bylaw, right? Fair enough. Question was drawn.
No, that would be what would somebody could apply.
That's what's called the long acre.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking. If there's a very wide road boom and it was fenced with no effect to traffic, there's no issues. Yeah.
So we'll talk to that next. So did you want me to keep going through the temporary stuff?
Please do. Yes.
So the enclosed area must not be overgrazed or trampled into mud. The owner must keep all water channels and culverts in the enclosed area protected from the animals to stop them from entering them. And you must not use the enclosed area as a place to store food supplements. So that was something we got feedback on the Manawatu provincial group, that they would feel that was suitable. And all fencing materials must be completely removed when the area has been grazed off. Yes, so hours of daylight, yeah. So if you're happy to move on to tethered animals.
Councillor Short.
Just reflecting on an example I've seen once or twice in the past. If we were to have a drought and people are getting very concerned for levels of pasture on their property, and you're trying to offload your cattle, but there's a queue at the works and things, it's not uncommon for people to put their cattle out, especially on a quiet road. And I think of a road nearby me that's a gravel no exit road, where in times of drought the farmer has actually let the cattle out for a couple of hours, but has always supervised them. How would that one be captured? Because it's also an animal welfare issue in that case. I mean, it's not just that they're helping themselves to the roadside. They really are, by then, they are in a desperate situation.
On occasions like that, we're fair and reasonable. So they just talk to Martin Skinner and we work through the safety implications and do what's reasonable and practical.
Just thinking of our climate change adaptation and mitigation.
Yeah, but we work collaboratively with the rural sector.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Yes, we're very nice people, you know.
So I've heard.
So grazing while tethered. So this is, we always have a laugh at this one, but for completeness, you can't tear the poultry, people. Bulls, pigs, horses or deer. So that kind of leaves goats and sheep and maybe a dairy cow. Again, the area that's been grazed must be your land or permission from the owner. Hours of daylight of the page here. And we want them to be tethered so they're not able to stray further than within 1.8 metres of the road carriageway. And again, it must not be trampled into mud. So pretty basic stuff there. Happy to move into permanent. So permanent roadside grazing, that is the construction of a permanent fence. So you must apply to council and get a licence to occupy. So we would work with the party in that case forming the licence to occupy, and that would be subject to a few conditions there. A lot of them relate to maintenance because obviously council's ability to maintain the area is affected by the permanent fence. Did you want to just squiz through those and just let us know if you had any questions?
Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, sorry, Brittany, just in terms of stock being grazed, sheep, steers, heifers or cows, does that prohibit the bull calves up to a certain age?
It does, yes.
Is there any more danger for, say, a 6-month-old bull, that dairy bull calf, being grazed than a steer?
Yeah, I suppose we could include under the age of.
Well, I again probably seek guidance from the colleagues, to be honest, but I just, again, it's a class of livestock, isn't it? That's probably not going to cause. Councillor Short, get the farmers on the room. It's just a thought, because it may be that people may want to do that.
Councillor Short.
It does depend on the suitability of the fencing. I can think of an example where dairy calves we put out on the road, but only behind one wire on a pigtail, and of course they're very agile and playful, and yeah, I had to put them back in the paddock.
If it is.
Well, it depends. As long as the fencing is, there's something we could say about a suitable fence, like so one wire might be suitable for a mature cow, but one wire wouldn't be enough to contain young stock. So something about suitable fencing that would contain it.
It's almost getting a bit specific.
Well,
Yeah, it's
No,
sort of
I'm happy, Brittany, I just
yeah.
thought I'd raise the question, that was all.
It's probably a lot of extra provision for something that maybe doesn't happen very often, but up to you if you'd like us to add something to that effect, or maybe we could wait to see feedback from the community
It's probably a good idea.
and revisit it.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
could be
Okay.
something to contain.
Councillor McFadden.
You could perhaps, just as a suggestion, just say for younger stock, you require multi-wire string. Picks up Councillor Short's point. So you have 2 wires or 3 wires like you do with sheep.
Happy with that, farmers?
So would you like us to revisit that after consultation? I can make a note and we can discuss
Yeah,
it.
we can see what the response to it is, but if we note that we've already,
Yeah,
that's something we would
Oh, we
consider
knew
doing.
about that, yeah. Okay, so well done, everyone. We've made it through all of the stock on road provisions.
So just to clarify, where did we get to with Richie?
No?
Greatest of all time? Go.
Oh, yeah. Dad joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Always worth pausing for a dad joke. So offences, we have a range of different mechanisms council can use. So for the parking and vehicle related things, we can ask for the vehicles to be removed or remove them ourselves. And also, if you are in breach of the proposed bylaw, we can pursue an offence mechanism and liable penalties, etc., under the Land Transport Act and the Local Government Act. So that is, if something went quite wrong, we'd be able to pursue those mechanisms. So that is basically what's included in the bylaw. Ray, if I'm able to pass to you, would you be able to talk about some of the work we're doing on the comms plan and our approach for the consultation period?
Can I just, before we do,
Yeah.
we've got a couple of questions. So that mine was actually a question and a dad joke. It was sort of a combined.
Oh.
So if what I'm just wanting to clarify, are we allowing goats to be tethered, in which case we're going to get another 700 submissions?
So we are allowing goats to be tethered, but my thinking around this is, we've done that to recognise the rural nature of our district and that we know the activity does occur. But also having a set of conditions helps to regulate that activity and brings it into council's, monitoring and etc. So there's the positive in that respect. But yes, to answer your question, I would expect to hear from the same submitters as last time we consulted.
Right, from Auckland.
From memory, I don't know where they were.
A lot of them were.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think
Councillor Hadfield.
all of them were out of town, if I recall. I think.
One of them was even in his.
Yeah, look, one of the things that I made a note of, Brittany, and I've just sort of not quite sure where it's figured out. Quite often on sale days down South Street, you'll see stock trucks, parked down the middle of the street and everything else, uniquely fielded, really, in a way. And I was on page 12 on part 2. How does our parking bylaw affect the ability of our stock trucks to actually do what they do on a Friday? And it may have been a bit late at night, but I couldn't quite figure out where we either said, that was actually couldn't happen or whether it could happen.
So the bylaw talks about being able to prohibit or restrict certain categories of vehicles, but it doesn't do that. So it gives you the power to in the future, but it doesn't do that. So if you as a council decided we don't want stock trucks, well, you could do that, but we don't, the bylaw's not saying that that is the case.
It's actually more for, you don't want HGV trucks parking in residential areas.
Oh, okay. Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, but I completely agree that it's one of the best parts of fielding and seeing that on Friday. So.
Yeah. It's actually a very great safety barrier, all those stock trucks parked down the middle of the road. Rip the speed limit up to 80 and you'd be safe as.
Exactly. So we're happy to hand over to Reid.
Yes, thanks, Ree. Hi, welcome.
Good morning, thank you. So I've been working really closely with Brittany on how we communicate this to the public to try and encourage as many people to submit feedback as possible. I think we took the approach which reflects what John mentioned earlier around we want to try and emphasise that we are needing to protect the assets of the roading network, but also provide that flexibility for people to do their work and also for keeping people safe on the roads, both pedestrians and road users. So the key things that we've been working on together were trying to take particularly the statement of proposal and just break it down into some quite plain English so that it doesn't really matter which area of the community you're coming from or where your kind of priorities lie. It's quite clear and really just highlights the balance we're trying to take. So we have created a space on our website which breaks down those areas into the roading, traffic controls, parking, stock on roads and stock underpasses, roadside grazing and tethering, and the vehicle crossings. That goes into a little bit more detail, but still quite high level, just to try and give the high level kind of detail around what each of those categories is looking at. We've then developed the statement of proposal and also added in all the different annexes that Brittany's gone through, so the map and the grazing standard, fencing standard. And we've then created obviously the online feedback form. We'll have paper copies available at council and the form available to download, print out and send back or email back. We've also looked at some targeted messaging for particular stakeholder groups, for example, fed farmers or the provincial group, and also potentially business owners around the parking provisions. And I'll be supporting Brittany to send out those via the different channels that we've got. And we've also looked at putting the public notice in the newspaper and doing some radio coverage as well as a press release.
Maybe you'd like to let us know some feedback on what radio stations farmers listen to. If anyone knows.
Jamie Mackay.
Talk about radio.
Yeah.
And Jamie Mackay at midday, I would have thought.
So is there any questions about the comms approach?
Councillor Hadfield.
Well, no, actually, I'm happy to move the recommendation. So, Mr. Chair, if there's no further questions.
Councillor Blackmore.
It's not a question, but I would just like to say something, how for someone new coming in to understand this felt pretty full on for me reading through, and it has been beautifully presented and discussed. So thank you very much for that experience, and to my fellow councillors for your really insightful questions and opinions. It's been very helpful for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, just back to the original question at the beginning, which you have covered very well in here, about the question of whether or not a bylaw is the most appropriate mechanism to deal with, an issue. I think you have covered it off pretty well, but, I just want to get your level of confidence that this is the most appropriate method and there are not other overriding national regulations and standards, government regulations that cover this already. I want to be sure that we're not duplicating anything that's already there. Yeah, thank you.
So when we started on this journey, we took the last attempt, this bylaw, and I said, give Brittany the list of legislation that covers all these things. So if it's covered by statute, cross it out. Because the definition, it's a bylaw, it sits beside the law. So we've skinnied out all the stuff that's covered by statutes. Good. And this is what remains.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to hear.
Just to add, we've also had a full legal review by Simpson and Greason, so they were pretty helpful in that respect as well.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
All right, good question and good to get a high level answer like that, which is really reassuring for us. Thank you. So we have you're prepared to move?
Happy to, and just agree with my colleagues' comments that this is a great iteration from round two. So well done, and it's been very gratifying to actually see the feedback from community taken note of and acted on. So it's a bloody good result. So, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to move that. One, that the council receives the Section 155 assessment, Annex A to this report, and determines pursuant to Section 155(1) of the Local Government Act 2002 that a bylaw is the most appropriate way of addressing the perceived problem identified for traffic safety and road use. Two, that the council approves the statement of proposal to be released alongside the proposed traffic safety and road use bylaw 2022 for public consultation in accordance with Section 83 and 86 of the Local Government Act 2002. And three, that council approves the proposed traffic safety and road use bylaw 2022 for public consultation from 18 November 2022 to 4 p.m. 16 December 2022, just in time for centre, in accordance with Section 83 and 86 of the Local Government Act 2002.
Thank you, Councillor Hadfield. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McFadyen, any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Passed. And
Thank you.
if I can just add my thanks and congratulations, I think we often hear that it's not worth submitting to council because they never listen, they've got preconceived ideas, blah, blah, blah. Well, this is exactly a case that proves that that's not the case. So we have listened and we have made a lot of changes, and
And now we're going to listen again.
and we're going to go through it all again, and we might still get some feedback,
Exactly.
etc. But I just think it's a great example of the public, the community actually being able to have input, and we listen and change.
Yeah, and we've certainly referenced that in our communications and messaging.
Brilliant, right,
So
yep.
we really did want to emphasise that we have listened and made those changes, and yeah, it's worth submitting.
Yeah, well done.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlotte, John, and Brittany,
Thank you.
and Ree. Now, we've just had another warning that we're going to have more thunderstorms again. I hope they're not as bad as yesterday. They were terrible. But on a serious note, they were pretty bad up Tai Happy Way, apparently. So we were lucky. But we could cop them this afternoon. And once again, there is a chance that the rainfall could be as bad or even worse than December 21. So, potentially it could be quite serious, but we were lucky yesterday. Right. 11.2, this will be Kathy. Standing committees, terms and reference and memberships. And we're on page 55, councillors. And Ros, welcome.
Good morning. Unfortunately, Ash is not very well at the moment, so Steph is here but unable to present. So we're just going to take you through the papers to formalise some of the process discussions that we had last week around standing committees and the membership in terms of reference. And so the first paper is just confirming the terms of reference and membership to the standing committees. And this is confirming Audit and Risk Committee, Chief Executives, Employment Committee, Creative Communities Assessment Committee, District Development Committee, and the Hearings Committee. And then the membership of the associated committees. Does anyone have any questions on that paper?
Councillor Campbell.
I'd just like to say, after reading yesterday's paper, the Pastoral Cities committee structure, I think we're very efficient. They seem to have committees for Africa. Yeah, so I think our structure's very good.
Great. Anyone else? Right.
I've got one more, just on the deputy chair roles, we are appointing those people named now, so that the committee doesn't need to be involved in that, do a resolution for that committee.
From what I understand is you appoint them.
Should choose the deputy, I think.
Well, we've got two.
We've got a mix.
Noted, or three actually, noted with the who will be the deputy chair. So has that been formalised as part of this?
So we're formalising John Folkes membership and Alicia McLaughlin and Councillor Ford on the Hearings Committee. Usually, from what I understand, is you'll decide the chair at the first meeting of the meetings. Deputy chair, sorry, first meeting of a committee.
And just an understanding with my appointment of deputy chair of hearings, it could well be a temporary position, particularly if someone else goes and does their commissioner papers, etc.
Sorry, just for the book.
Councillor Short.
In Francis, he's looked into the RMA training and it's fairly full. There are one or two who've indicated they're interested, but she couldn't get them a place in the course until sort of March or something like that. So that would remain for a while.
Lynn.
Just to Councillor Campbell's point,
was your point that in the report under point 2 of the recommendations, it says in accordance with the appointment of the chairpersons, and you think it should have deputy chairpersons if they've been identified?
Oh, look, it's a fairly minor point really, but if we're making a decision now that those people are going to be the deputy chair, well, we'll just appoint them now. No need for a further resolution at the committee.
Right, I think that's the understanding. The ones that have got 2 TBC, well, they'll follow at the first meeting. Right, do you want us to move the recommendation now? Right, someone prepared to move? Councillor Campbell.
I have to move that the attached terms of reference to this report be adopted by the council for the following committees: Audit Risk Committee, Chief Executives, Employment Committee, Creative Communities Assessment Committee, District Development Committee, Hearings Committee, and 2, council confirms the below memberships of the standing committees in accordance with the appointment of the chairpersons made at the inaugural meeting 25th of October 22 and the attached terms of reference of this report.
It's fine, thank you. Councillor Campbell, do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Blackmore, any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Motion is passed. Thank you.
And so on to the next paper, which is subordinate decision-making bodies and elected member appointments. And this is just to clarify who is attending.
Page 66 for us.
Page 66. And so we're taking you through who is attending the focus group meetings and terms of reference for the submissions assessment panel, because that's just recently been reviewed at that meeting, and also appointing elected members to the various groups. We are aware of some changes and some additions to those groups. Councillor Ford will attend the infrastructure focus group.
Yes, thank you.
And just to clarify that the Mana Whakahari membership is Councillor Bell, Councillor Ford and the Mayor. And there is a repetition of that. That's an error, so my apologies there. In terms of the Youth Council, we have Councillor Blackmore, who has agreed to be on that. We still are, for what I'm aware, missing someone, another person. In terms of fielding district promotion, Councillor Campbell and Councillor Corrie have agreed to be on that board. Does anyone have any questions around any of that? Or is there anything else that I am unaware of?
Councillor Short.
Just in those other subordinate groups, the one that I forwarded through the other day, which I was going to ask in exec time, but I probably should mention now, is the Manawatu Health and Wellbeing Group, because in its terms of reference, the Manawatu Health and Wellbeing Group, it does actually make reference. So it's, for those who aren't aware, it's the locality planning out of the former DHB, and they've been set up in every TLA in the mid-central area. And in the terms of reference of that group, the composition of the group says that the council should be represented by 1 councillor and 1 staff member. Shane Casey was the councillor and Janine is the staff member. Technically, I'm there as a community rep. It would be good if a second person would like to do it, but whether you want to decide that today or it's not a big commitment. We meet currently once every 2 months. It's very fluid at the moment with the changes to the health system, but if locality planning does get pushed more towards local government, it would be more involved in the future.
So we can add that in today as part of the other changes to get put through. Is there a recommendation or someone that wants to sit on there that we could add on to this?
Do we have someone who would be interested in sitting on that committee? Councillor Blackmore, fantastic. Anyone else?
That would be perfect.
Great.
And Zoom is often an option too.
Thank you, Councillor Blackmore. That sounds really positive. Thank you. So if we can add that in. Thank you, Steph.
So can I just clarify, we are still missing a second elected member for the Youth Council. Was there anyone else that wanted to put their hand up or be involved, or is everyone still thinking about that at the moment?
It's a Monday, isn't it? Most of my Mondays are committed, otherwise I'd probably offer, but yeah.
So I think I failed the age threshold. So
Is that sorry?
I fail the age threshold.
Ah.
They might like your dad jokes.
I don't think so. Anyone else keen to join the Youth Council?
Just a question. The need for two, is that written into some terms of reference, or is that just,
No,
where's that come from?
it's just.
Steph.
Chairman, the need for two is because the Youth Council cannot meet without a liaison councillor, and if one is unavailable, then the other one is in attendance, either in Zoom or in person. So if we had someone who was able to be a step-in for you in the interim.
Right, just on Zoom, we'll go to Bridget first.
Kia ora everyone. I know that this kaupapa probably is more aligned to my age. So I just want to mihi to you, Lara, for the space that you have taken for our rangatahi. I have spoken with Lara, but I thought I would share with everyone today that I'm happy to step in the background. I don't want to formalize it. And the reason why I don't want to formalize it is because I've committed to our rangatahi group for our iwi. That is the space that Te Kotuito have asked me to step into. So, but I'm happy over time, I'm sure our rangatahi group will perhaps have a relationship with this council in the future. So that is the space that I just want to acknowledge you for, Lara. And I'm happy to support you, Lara, at events and come in when you need another young person just to make yourself feel safe around teenagers and our beautiful hormonal adolescent wonderful leaders that are coming through. I couldn't hear you, Steph, clearly, but did you say that we don't need a second person? It's just to step in when Lara's unavailable, or we need to confirm another councillor within our group? Do we need to formally acknowledge that there's two that sit in that space?
Yes, it would be preferable to have two sitting in that space, but to have someone to step in who is available would be an alternate would be good, but it is preferable to have two.
Okay, I won't commit to being the second person, but I will commit, Lara, when you're not available, I'm happy to come in.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bell. Councillor Underwood. Councillor Underwood.
Yes, did you want me to say something?
You've got your hand up, so I thought you were wanting to say something.
Oh, sorry. No, I didn't have my hand up. I was just resting my head.
No, your electronic hand.
Oh, I don't know where, sorry.
All right, so you should have seen us a couple of years ago. We were terrible. So
I didn't click it. I didn't click it on purpose. If it's up, I'm sorry.
It is still up. If you can try and get it down, fine. But I realise that it's a bit of a challenge. All right, we'll move on. So I think from what I'm hearing, we can work with that arrangement. Thank you. So we've got Councillor Blackmore as our is on the Youth Council, and Councillor Bell is a reserve if as and when required. So thank you, Councillor Bell. That's really helpful. Right, we have the recommendation there, Councillor Short.
I'm happy to do that. And if we could just include that one addition, that the council confirms the establishment of the below subordinate decision-making bodies, including the listed memberships, noting that terms of reference for each body, with the exception of the submissions assessment panel, will be finalised at a later date.
Right, and Steph, you've picked up the amendments and the additions, etc. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Hadfield. Any discussion? Oh, sorry, Councillor Bell, your hand is up.
Oh, electronic.
Your electronic hand is up. Councillor Bell.
I think they dropped around the screen, seems to be on the screen.
Oh, okay. So we're
sitting on the screen, Mr. Chairman, not an individual.
Yeah, the screen's playing musical chairs, and so we had Councillor Bell with the electronic hand instead of Councillor Underwood. Okay, so it's really confusing for this chair.
There's 2 and 3.
Oh, number 2. That the attached terms of reference document with a submissions assessment panel be adopted by the council without amendment. And number 3, that the council appoints the below elected members representatives to other groups as listed.
Right, thank you, Councillor Short. And Councillor Hadfield, are you prepared to second that extended motion?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Any discussion? So Councillor Underwood, just so we're clear, because your electronic hand is up permanently, if you want to say something, can you raise your physical hand so that I'm clear if you want to say something?
Yeah, I just put my electronic hand up and then took it down again, and it's not showing on my screen.
Okay, right. We've got some fun with the system then. So, but just so that if you do want to say something, please just raise your actual hand.
Oh, hello.
And I think, we got some more hands up. Hey, right. I think we'll put the motion before I get completely confused. All those in favour, please raise your hand. To the contrary, carried. Thanks.
That was raising a manual hand.
Anyone know what happened then? I don't know.
Would be handy to know.
Right, now we're up to is it 11.4, appointment of liaison councillors to community committees, page 70. And
this is just confirming the councillors which will be attending each community committee. There have been a couple of changes, but I think we've captured them with Lara picking up the youth council. Councillor Underwood has agreed to take on Huanui. That's correct. So hopefully this is
updated. Yes, what we've got has Councillor Underwood at Huanui, so that's good. Any queries, councillors? Right, that's the case. We've got a recommendation. Oh, Steve, sorry. Sorry, Councillor Belsky.
No, it's just an apology to Councillor Bell. She sent out an emergency or a request that someone fill in for her last night, and I never replied, and I feel stink about that because I think replying means you received it, and I was fencing way back out and never got home till 7, so I couldn't have made it. But I think if we can't make it, do exactly what Councillor Bell did. But I just feel a bit stink that I didn't reply to you. So sorry about that, Councillor Bell, for not replying to your urgent request. And I did feel for you. And so thanks. It's just that we can fill in for others at urgents, but it was just a bit. I didn't do my job yesterday. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Belsky. No need to feel stink. And Councillor Bell gave you a thumbs up, so she appreciates your comments. So well done.
Yeah, thank you.
Right. Now, where do we get to? Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Hadfield, Councillor Short. Stop being polite to each other.
You move this one and I'll second.
Okay. Now that the council appoints the following liaison councillors to community committees. You wish me to read the list?
No, we're all comfortable with the list there. And Councillor Short, I take it that you're happy to second that. Thank you. Any discussion? Put the motion. Those in favour, please say aye. I'll raise your hands. To the contrary, carried. Thank you. Right.
Thank you. Okay. Next paper is to just consider the
Remuneration,
members' remuneration.
page 73 for us.
That is, yes, 73. And so we, after the discussion last week, we have put forward 3 options. Based on the discussions, the first option was that were the original weightings that we put through. Sorry, they weren't the original weightings, but we have allocated the submissions assessment panel of 1.05 based on Councillor Campbell's comments last week as well. So that's option 1. So it's proposing 90% additional REM against the base salary. Option 2 is proposing 100% with an increase there of REM for the deputy mayor and in that responsibility. And option 3 has been worked out on a manual basis and is looking at keeping the higher duties for the chairs and people involved in the submissions of the assessment panel and the deputy mayor, and then reducing the councillor base REM. So I don't know if anyone has any comments on that.
Right, we'll open that for discussion. Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Kathy. Look, we have had some dialogue around this before, and varying views were put forward. I think the Deputy Mayor made his personal position very clearly known.
Which I still hold.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. Having read this, I'm very keen that as a council that we come to a consensus on this. As if we don't agree at a consensus, it will actually require staff to undergo a little bit more work in explaining why there was a division in the vote on the material going back to the Remuneration Authority. I have read that right, haven't I? There is a procedure if we don't have a unanimous decision around this, that very good reason has to be explained to the Remuneration Authority as to why we didn't arrive at a consensus. So my view is that as a council, we should be keen to avoid that extra work if we can. And so my only comment is that I fully respect the Deputy Mayor's strong desire around his preference. And on that basis, I would support, and I think it's option 1, isn't it, to be correct? I would support and thank the Deputy Mayor for his frank dialogue on this topic. And I would support option 1.
Okay.
On that basis.
Any further discussion, questions? Councillor Blackmore.
Thank you. I support Councillor Hadfield's comments. I would just like to understand again, perhaps this was covered last week, but how the 90%, what does that mean? Proposing 90% additional remuneration against that base salary?
I actually might ask Councillor Campbell to explain it. He'll probably do a far better job than me.
Yeah, it's just a way of apportioning. So council gets given a pool of money to allocate among councillor salaries of 450 odd thousand. So it's just a matter of apportioning that out. So if you go to the middle column there, if we put a factor of 1 against the base salary, and we say, well, we think that the deputy's mayor role should have a 40% premium over a base salary, and a committee chair should be a 10% premium over. I know in Palmerston North, yesterday they just put a dollar figure on it. They've given the chairs $5,000 over and above the base rate, and they actually paid the deputy chairs $2,000 for some reason over and above the base rate. And I think that's all they did in terms of extra amounts for other roles. So instead of having a dollar amount, we're just applying a factor. And so we've said if the base rate is 1, we'll give a 5% premium to the submissions assessment panel, a 10% premium to the committee chairs, and a 40% premium to the deputy mayor. So
Should that then mean that that adds up to 90%, 0.9?
no,
Okay. Sorry, I'm still, does that mean there's a leftover amount?
no,
Okay.
no, the whole lot's allocated.
Okay. Oh, I'm happy just to trust that the process is.
If it's any consolation, Councillor Blackmore, I don't understand it either.
Okay.
So that 90%, 100%, I'm sorry, I still haven't figured that out, Councillor Campbell.
So, well, basically, what it means the deputy mayor is getting 40% more than a base councillor rate, and the chair is getting 10% more than the base councillor rate. Simple as that, really.
No, where's the 90% though?
Oh, there is no 90%.
So it says at the top, ratio is proposing 90% additional remuneration against the base salary. And then the next one says option 2, ratios proposing 100% additional remuneration against the base salary. And a bit like Councillor Blackmore, I wondered whether there was some left over for.
Mr. Chair, if I can throw a little bit of light
Councillor
on this.
Hadfield, please do.
If I throw a little bit of light on it, I'll turn the torch on and I'll let Councillor Campbell pick it up again. But the 10% that's referred to was the 10% originally, the conversations we had around the submissions assessment panel were 1.1. So there's actually two 0.05s in there, which is 0.1 or 10%, which is where the 90% has come in, I believe, probably. Yeah. Oh, looking for a little bit more definitive response on that. But I think but I do wonder whether that heading under option 1 is actually slightly confusing.
Yeah,
probably is. Yeah.
So given that I presume whatever we do here goes to the Remuneration Authority, perhaps we could rejiggle that as part of the motion.
So I think the only confusing bit, as I understand it, are the bits in brackets for option 1 and 2, and maybe even 3, but particularly 1 and 2, because if we seem to have an assurance that the pool of money that's been given is all going to be allocated.
That has to be.
Which it has to be, yeah. So I think that's the main thing, and then we now just need to decide how that's allocated, and we have. Councillor Hadfield has suggested that we run with option 1. We're still in discussion. So Councillor Blackmore, are you comfortable with where we've got to at the moment?
Yes, thank you. I just wonder whether we double check that we count up the actual dollars and make sure it's the full pot.
I've done that.
You've done that?
It does
Okay.
add up.
Thank you. Okay, I'm happy.
So
We were using Stuart's spreadsheet.
Well, which was interesting because it was the same spread. I've done this 3 years ago, and then the Remuneration Authority sent us a spreadsheet which was exactly the same as mine. So I was very pleased with that.
thank you, Councillor Belsky.
Yeah, I think Councillor Hadfield hit the nail on the head when we need to be unified in what option. And to me, option 1 fits the best for me. And I think, it's important that we do agree on option 1, but that's just my opinion. But thank you. Yep, that's me.
Just double checking, Councillor Bell, did you have your hand up or not? Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Prior to Councillor Hadfield's comments about ensuring that we had kotahitanga for for either option 1, 2, or 3, I actually was fully supportive of option 2, purely because there was only one person in the room at our last meeting that disagreed with, and it was yourself, Mr. Chair, about increasing your puti in your space. If it's easy on our operational team and if it's easy in the process, I'll go with option 1. I'm still feeling that option 2 is best. And that's even more so with the recent passing of our Mayor's beloved husband, and knowing that, Michael, your space that you hold as a friend and a deputy, and I mentioned that in the last time, there's always emotional labour that we as councillors won't get to see that you'll be doing. So option 2 is for me what I think we should go with. But if it's easy on the team, then I'm happy to change my mind and go with option one. I do just want to clarify, I think I have a question for our general managers. What does it look like if we don't all agree and we submit it to the authority? What is the new process with that? What does that look like?
Kathy.
I think they provide a recommendation back to us. It has to go through their process anyway, and they could come back and disagree with what we've proposed.
What if we put in the comments that Mr. Chair wasn't feeling well on the day? I'm kidding, we won't do that. But I do want all the councillors just to reconsider what our 3-year term will look like, and with our new circumstances, and also looking at the remuneration pool of the other districts. And no doubt you work just as hard as the other deputy mayors in other districts, Mr. Chair. So just for the other councillors to have a think before we get to voting.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Hadfield. Councillor McFadden.
I definitely share the same view as Councillor Bell, but I respect your right to do as you wish, Mr. Chairman. So I would.
And that applies right throughout the 3 years.
Yes, I understand that. Yes, yeah.
On every issue.
Yeah, I agree with the fact that we would prefer to have option 2, but respect your decision to decline that. So would support option 1.
Great. So option 1, I think it is. Councillor Short.
Can I just clarify, Kathy, this is for 12 months and then it gets reviewed again?
For 12?
Is it for 12 months and then it gets reviewed again? Does it get reviewed annually?
Yes, so if we get a new determination, we'll review it. We'll get a new determination around salary and the REM part around June time. I understand that's depending on when the REM authority sends it, and we'll have another discussion around how that's. Usually it's just allocated as per our agreement now, but we could have another discussion.
So I actually came into it preferring option 2, and I think I still do prefer option 2 because we're talking about the current 12 months and the extra workload that the Deputy Mayor has. And I know he's graciously said he doesn't require that extra, but I think we need to recognise the workload that he's under. And I'm also hopeful that we will have a new iwi engagement group of some kind, hopefully in the next 12 months. So when we review it next time, we might need to remunerate someone for participation in that group, whatever that might look like.
I'll make a comment just
Kathy.
I think we would need to just adjust the recommendation to say that we'll review it at 12 months, just to make sure we clarify that, because it's usual that we would, so even though the REM amount increases, I don't necessarily, over the last few years, you haven't actually reviewed how the weightings are, but it can be done.
Right, I suggest we're overcomplicating it, and I think we just adopt option 1 now for the next 3 years. Councillor Campbell.
I'll just add a comment again, referring to what Palmerston North did yesterday, which is probably no relevance at all to us, but just out of interest, I was rather surprised to see they're only giving the Deputy Mayor an extra 7,000 above the base salary. So compared to the Mayor's salary over there of 160, the Deputy's getting 60, about 61.
The previous Deputy was getting 80 something.
Yeah, so they've really devalued the role of Deputy Mayor, which is bizarre because it does, as we're all aware, involve a lot of work. So yeah, just my understanding of commercial boards, a deputy, they all vary, but I think a common understanding is that a deputy would probably be a half of the chair's role. That's my guess. So the mayor's salary is 105.
110.
It's more than that.
120 something, I think.
Yeah, no, I think it's more like 120.
Whatever it is. So
Yeah.
I guess, the 57 versus 54 in our case would be closer to the half. So it's a bit less than half we're offering. We'll go with whatever motion is put.
All right, well, I'll move that the council recommends to the Remuneration Authority that the following positions with additional responsibilities be remunerated at the proposed ratio to councillor base remuneration set out in the following table. option 1, and I'm going to delete the words in brackets, and then as per the table there on page 73. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McFadyen. Any further discussion?
Do we have to say to be reviewed annually?
This is not to be reviewed annually as my motion,
okay.
but
if we end up with this extra position that I was mentioning, we might have to review it.
I think that's probably happened. Well, I think we probably need to revisit that at the time.
Yeah, can't preempt.
Yeah.
Fine.
well, when that position, going back previously, when that position was no longer, we made a change. So that would indicate that we can make a change the other way around again, as and when. Councillor Hadfield?
That's my understanding, Mr. Chair, is that at any time council can make a recommendation to the Remuneration Authority. I think the key thing here is two things are going to happen. One is at some point in time, what Councillor Short's suggesting may happen, but the other thing is that the Remuneration Authority will come out with another determination at some point in time that will automatically cause council to revisit the issue.
Yep.
So I think without complicating it, I think we should move forward on the motion that you've placed, Mr. Chair.
Right, we have a motion and it has been seconded. I do thank you for the sentiments that you've expressed. I do really appreciate that. Thank you. I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And so that is unanimous. To the contrary, carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, could I just make a comment about the, it's probably our ongoing frustration with the Remuneration Authority's guidelines in regards to council salaries across the country, because in Auckland and Christchurch, the council salaries are very large. They're over 100,000 per councillor. Even in Palmerston North now, they are earning a base salary of 54. Our councillors are earning a base salary of 38. And I can't see there's any difference at all between our workload. And Palmerston North is Manawatu. So, you know, that is a concern and it frustrates me no end, really. I think there needs to be a review. If that's the case, it would indicate a councillor in Kaikoura or West Coast is probably earning next to nothing. And we're, in terms of population, the Manawatu is smack in the middle of council sizes across the country. I think, you know, there should be an adjustment to make it a bit fairer.
Somewhat heartened by the Future for Local Government roadshow that some of us went to the other day. Penny Hulse, who's on the panel, she was the Deputy Mayor of Auckland. She made exactly the same point that actually the Mayor of Palmerston, the Deputy Mayor of Palmerston North's workload is much the same as the Deputy Mayor of Auckland. That was her comment. And she said that will be part of what they're recommending to the government. So I think they at least have got that. Agree with you, Councillor Campbell?
Probably one of the useful bits I've got.
Councillor Short.
Exactly my point. So.
Okay, right. All right, thank you, Kathy and Ros. We've got
one more to go.
Oh, right. Sorry. 11.6 elected members allowances and expense reimbursement policy. And that's page 80.
So this is just to adopt your allowances and expense reimbursement policy. Steph, was there anything that you wanted to add? You took us through it last week.
Just to take the microphone. Oh, thanks.
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, I think everything was explained through the workshop. The only thing to note is that this year we will have the childcare allowance to add into our expenses. But apart from that, everything is pretty much self-explanatory.
Thank you, Steph. Any questions, comments, councillors? Councillor Hadfield.
Happy to move, Mr. Chair, if there's no further
Thank you.
Conversation. I move that the council adopts the following elected members' allowances and expense reimbursement policy for the period 14 October to 30 June 2025. And 2, that the Chief Executive be given delegation to approve amendments to the expenses. and allowances policy within the triennium as set annually by the remuneration authority's determination.
Just clarification, 14 October, should that be 2022?
Yes.
Thanks.
Good.
Great. Right, do we have a seconder? Councillor Short, any discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Those to the contrary? Carried. Thanks very much, Kathy and Ros.
Thanks, Steph.
We have no late items to consider. So I'll double check, but I think we can close the meeting. We'll close the meeting at 10:21 or something like that. I think now's a good time for a morning tea break. If we